Welcome to Probate Weekly. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate, BillGrossProbate.com. And we broadcast every Thursday on all the local social media channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Rumble, Twitter, X, Twitch, and talk about real estate as it relates to probate in a focused business. We interview attorneys and important vendors. And one of the vendors I've used that really helped me launch my business in Los Angeles is Approved Inheritance Cash and Paul Wilkins. And for those of you who don't know, they're a company that helps families and estates when they start probate and need additional cash. There's some shortcuts to help you get started. Paul, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate your having me on again. I love your show.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And you have been on before, which I appreciate. But you've also been involved in this field, I think, for quite a while. I remember I got a copy of your book years ago and read it. How long have you been dealing with approved inheritance cash and related services?
Yes, I've been in this since 1996, so
wow,
going on 30 years.
Now, I used to go to court every day in LA County, and I would see you there regularly. Of course, with COVID, for a period of time, we couldn't go. Do you still go to court occasionally, regularly, or is it all done remotely now for you?
Pretty much all remotely.
Yeah.
But it's more and more frequent now than it has been in the past. So
more frequent that you are involved in remote appearances and such?
I think there's more cases that require attendance or appearances. So
yeah.
I'm a lot more involved in court hearings than I had been in the past, like when I met you.
One of the really lost benefits of that time was I could go to court and meet people and learn. And you're one of the people who I learned by watching you operate. And then I kind of caught you in the court in the hallways and asked some questions. And you're kind enough to give me a copy of a book that you wrote on the process. So I really feel like the next group have really lost the opportunity. That's the purpose of this podcast, is to educate. And I know education is a big part of your marketing, that you seek to help people learn how to use your service so they can give you referrals. Talk a little bit about your strategy on that.
Yes. When we have callers come into the office, I tell them right off the top, it's not about me making a deal. It's more about me helping you solve your problem. And if I can make a deal helping you solve your problem, fine.
Right.
But I wanted, 40 years ago, I wanted to be an educator. So this is me still in that educator mode, 40 years later, that I can help people understand the process and help them solve their problems. Right. in many cases.
And I think along those lines, too many real estate sales companies, training companies focus on lead generation and cold calling. I've always thought my goal is to find people who have a problem, and if I solve it, then somehow I end up getting paid or get paid in the long run. So let's talk about what are the most common problems when people come to you. What's the most common problem they have that you're helping them solve?
Okay, I was thinking about this, and it's basically on two levels. The heirs would be the main contact source, and their issues are pretty much day to day. I don't have a job. I need money to pay bills. I need money to pay the lights. I need money for groceries. One step up would be, I don't have a place to live, and there's the estate selling the home. I need to move. Okay, fine. We can provide you money to help you move out of the house so the estate can sell the property. But we're not going to throw you out cold turkey. You're not going to be sleeping in your car. We'll give you some money. You can go get an apartment or a place to rent and have a normal life.
So let's talk about those examples. So the first one is people just need cash. And so this is a person who is either the petitioner or the executor, administrator, or the heir who stands to inherit something, but while they might open probate right away, they're not going to get the proceeds typically for a year, 2 years, or longer. And so what you're able to do is advance them some money now for routine living expenses, whatever that means, cash for groceries, for rent payments, for car payments, And so what's a typical advance amount that people are getting under those circumstances?
The vast majority of our advances are in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. We're not talking, mega bucks here.
Right.
We're talking about essentially 5 to 10,000. We're talking a paycheck for a month or 2 months, enough to tide people over to solve their problems.
I had one occasion with you guys that my client had taken advance, and the attorney was saying, "Oh, it's expensive money. It's expensive money." And after she did, because she needed it for, I think, a car for work. Her car broke down, and I think she needed $5,000 or $10,000, and so we advanced her, and she bought a car. And she called me back a few weeks later crying that her aunt had died, and she wished she had money to help with the funeral expenses. Her aunt was like her mother. She had this inheritance coming of $800,000, but she wasn't going to get it for another 6 months or a year. And you were able to advance her like $10,000, and she put on the funeral that she wanted to, and she felt she honored her in her mind, her like her mother, her aunt. And it made all the difference in the world. And you can argue about, well, it's expensive or not, but she wasn't going to get the money for a couple of years, and you're helping shorten that time period for them to live their life.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I tell people. I ask them, one of the first things I do is I ask them, what do you need the money for? Right. And I've had a few people in the past say, oh, I want to take a cruise, or I want to take a vacation. And it's like, you know what? You can take the vacation after probate settles because the money's too expensive. But if you need money for groceries, you need money to live, you need money to move, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And you're not getting cheap money, you're getting peace of mind. That's right. The one thing that I cannot define for you. Only you can define it for yourself. Yeah. The peace of mind knowing that you can deal with your problems today, tomorrow, and next week, and you don't have to wait for some judge to approve the final distribution, 12, 18 months from now.
Right. Because it takes a lot long. Whatever time you think it takes, it's going to take longer, right? The average probate in LA County is over 2 years is the closing time on average. Shouldn't take that long. And attorneys, well, it shouldn't take more than a year. Okay, but it does. Why? The attorneys filled the paperwork right. Something doesn't get signed. Somebody pops up out of the blue. Something happens. Life happens. And so to wait the heirs get their money at the very end of that period. They don't get the money before. And so the probate advance helps them beforehand. So then when you talk about what's moving, and this is a common case where, at least the case I see most commonly is, mom and dad die, leave a house to 4 kids. One's living there. He's been living there for free, maybe taking care of mom or dad for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, never had a job, never did any work, but took care of mom or dad. House is worth $800,000. They're going to inherit $200,000, but they can't afford to move out. They don't have first and last. They probably don't have a job. They're going to need time to find a job. And so we get an advance to cover the first, last, some moving money, and maybe 3 or 6 months of expenses to help them get settled. So talk about that scenario for a little bit. How often does that happen, and what's that look like to you?
All the time. That is a common, we're going to do several of those things a month. And sometimes these people, they need to come back, and that's okay. We can usually help them 2 or 3 times. I don't have to sell the product. The product sells itself. The need sells itself. So all I need to do is help people solve their problem, whether they can go live with their aunt or uncle or their cousin, and maybe they don't have to go out and spend, $2,500 a month to rent an apartment, or couch surf with friends for a couple months. And whatever works to solve their problem. If they need money, we're here, we'll help. But yeah, that is such a common scenario, the one you just mentioned. Yeah.
One of the misconceptions of people who get these inheritances or advances is they think once they go to you, they're done and they have to go to another company to get more money. But really the opposite is true. Once you've done the case once and you know the attorney, you know the case, you've done your work, I think it's easier for you to do a second or third advance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's much easier because I know the case. I was working on one yesterday where the property had been in foreclosure. The attorney, this is a few months ago, was sweating that the lender was going to foreclose on him before he can get it sold. and I was very familiar. The property did finally close escrow in December. So another heir came to me last week and says, "Hey, I need some money." Okay, I know everything about this because I've been in touch with the attorney throughout the last several months. Easy. Boom.
Right.
Let's go.
So let's talk about what you have to do in order to qualify. Number one, you have to be an heir or beneficiary of the estate, correct?
Correct.
So how do they know if they're an heir or beneficiary of the estate?
Hopefully, but not always, the estate attorney or family members have communicated with them to let them know what's going on. But as we all know, there's many dysfunctional families, just to be, straight up, and the communication isn't there. So, again, typical. I'll get a call probably once a day or once every other day. I got this communication, or I find out about your service, but I don't know if I'm getting anything because no one's communicated that grandma died or Uncle Joe died. And, I'll do the research from there to verify their ability, their status as an heir or a beneficiary, and go from there.
Now, another looking at your website is that the estate has to be in probate, but I do believe I've worked with you in cases where we've got the advance to use to cover the initial fees and or attorney's fees for filing the probate, meaning you'll advance money to the attorney who will manage all that. So technically they're not yet in probate, but you'll help get that process started. And I think that's where the most promising cases are for us as vendors. Talk a little bit about that scenario.
Sure. I just got paid off on one yesterday. In fact, when the client came to us, she had not opened probate yet. So the first thing we did is advance some money, and if you want, we can send it directly to the estate attorney to get the ball rolling. And I get a fair amount of referrals like that, especially directly from estate attorneys who, they need the money for filing fees, publications, and so forth, and the clients don't have it. And typical, like you said a few minutes ago, it's one of these people that were taking care of mom and dad and haven't been working for years, and they don't have any cash. They've been subsisting on mom and dad's Social Security check, to pay the groceries for the last several years, and they have no source of income. So our funds are available and used for that purpose, among others.
And these are cases where attorneys might turn down the case because the customer doesn't have money. But the reality is if they're going to inherit the money, they're going to inherit. There's a way to monetize that up front and not just cover the attorney's fees, but also cover the upfront fees, the filing fees and the publication fees and things like that otherwise might be out of pocket.
Right. A lot of people don't realize that in at least in California, the attorneys can't pay themselves until the estate has closed.
Correct.
So the attorneys are taking these cases essentially on not a contingency, but I'll get paid later. I was talking to one attorney that I deal with quite a bit a few months ago, and he says, Paul, I have over $100,000 out of my pocket, paying publication fees, filing fees, and whatever, just because there's so many cases and they take so long to settle. That's a lot of cash for attorneys, especially younger ones or ones that don't do a lot of business, put out of their pocket. So, that's one reason they might turn down a case, but that's one reason why they should come to us, or the client should come to us, and we'll fund them.
And I think that that's also a reason why the attorney should work with a real estate professional like me who knows your tool, because sometimes they're hesitant to sell the service, but I'm a salesman. My job is to solve people's problems, and I'll tell them up front, hey, you don't have to pick the attorney who needs you to put money up. We can do the advance. And by the way, while we do that and get a $1,500 for expenses, we can get you an extra $3,000, $5,000 of cash for groceries, for upgrading your life while you're waiting for things to happen, while you're whatever the situation might be. And so that's the kind of thing where I've attempted to bring more value to the attorneys because I know the players and can get these things done for them.
Just something that's happened recently, as we're all aware. This is like 25 years ago. My grandparents died, and I was the executor of the estate. So we're looking through the paperwork, and guess what? There was no insurance on the property. For whatever reason, it had lapsed. What about all the people in Altadena, Pacific Palisades, whatever? I can assure you there's a good couple dozen houses that were in probate in those areas that were uninsured.
Right.
And now, they're going to really get screwed. Poor people. Okay. Again, had they come to us, for funds for an insurance policy, expensive as they are, we could have provided it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why I think it becomes more of a holistic, what do we need to get through the next year or two, rather than just getting the probate set up. So let's talk, and then I'm sorry, one more piece is to be eligible. I think your minimum advance is about $5,000. So you're really looking for somebody who has a beneficial interest of like $15,000 or more minimum, correct?
Yes, but I will make exceptions. Especially if somebody just needs to get the case going. If I've seen a couple of administrators come to us, they're beneficiaries and they might only be receiving $10,000. Okay, but if they need a couple grand to get the process rolling, fine, we'll give them a smaller advance and help them get the job done.
Now, you also, on your website list, as opposed to heirs, administrator advances. Of course, administrator can be an heir as well, but they have the additional responsibilities of managing the estate. And so on there, you list a couple of things: making mortgage payments, reinstating the property out of foreclosure, making repairs, settling claims. So talk a little bit about, is that the same rate and fee structure as the advances? That's just another way somebody might use that, as rather than helping with their personal expenses, they're going to use the money to benefit the estate?
Right. The intention of that is to help the estate deal with larger issues and allocate the funds from the administrator standpoint, so that I'm thinking of one estate right now that I'm dealing with. They have a nice house in Flint Ridge, several $1 million, but there's one heir that's been litigating on other issues. And, to kind of clearly show that the funds are being used for estate purposes, we're structuring one transaction as an administrator advance, specifically to kind of Teflon coat the situation for the administrator, so she doesn't have a problem later on.
Right. And that expense becomes split amongst multiple heirs rather than just out of their share of the money.
Correct. And as should be any, monies taken out for mortgage payments. I had one last year. Property was going to tax sale. It was a $2 million wind farm in Kern County. And the estate attorney, who's a good associate of mine, called up the day before the tax sale and said, we need a loan. I sat there and I did it. It was a $50,000 advance, but I put it together and got it. We wired the money the next day, which was the absolute last day, to the Kern County treasurer, and took care of it. So, there's other cases where we have to step in immediately, but that was a $2 million save for the estate. It would have gone to sale, and that tax sales, everything gets swallowed up pretty well.
Yeah. Hey, Lou, real quick, let's do some housekeeping and share where we are. Fortunate today to have as our guest Paul Wilkins with Approved Inheritance Cash. ApprovedInheritanceCash.com is the website. On there, they have various pieces explaining what they do, blog, and then description of their services, and then a contact button. You can apply online. There's a phone number you can click on. They're located in Pasadena. You can make an appointment and go in and see him as well in person. He also is servicing primarily the Southern California area, but they do business all over. So call him, contact him. You can apply now. This is Probate Weekly. We broadcast every Thursday on all the social media channels. If you want to get reminders, go to probateweekly.com, put your email address, phone number if you want to get text reminders. You don't need to. Love to have you, though, join regularly. And then we're on the various audio platforms, Spotify, Audible, all that stuff. And past episodes available on YouTube by clicking here, and that will take you to the playlist of all the past episodes. You can see actually the web channel with all the different options. And then we have a Facebook group, Probate Weekly. We have over 4,000 members. And love to have you there if you're looking for referrals for attorneys or realtors in other states, other areas. Great place to post your needs there. Also, any probate related or estate planning related social media, you can post there and get more views and likes. You'll see I put mine there. But I also have other agents who put their podcast. Let me see one here. Kevin Bamble, friend of the program, has his own Trust Estates Weekly, and he posts his episodes there, and other people as well post their vendors and such. So I'd love to have you share in the fun, so to speak, of our Facebook group. So we talked about the product and maybe from a consumer-facing side. Let's talk a little bit from the partner-facing side. In your case, I know most of your business comes from attorneys, though you also work with real estate agents. Talk about what does that relationship look like with attorneys? What are you trying to create, and how does it help you with your business, and how does it help the customer?
With the attorneys that I deal with, I think the biggest comfort level the biggest comfort feeling that they have about our company is that we will solve their problems. Yeah. Sometimes I have to scratch my head 2 or 3 times and go, how am I going to do this? Well, we get it done. And, we have normal guidelines like most, finance companies. I might have to go above and beyond my guidelines a little bit for the attorneys, but I will, because I know that they have my back and we need to get this problem solved. Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of one right now where, first of all, we had to get the case going. We needed some money to pay the attorney, the filing fees and so forth, to get a bond. Okay. And then we had to keep the property out of foreclosure. So we had to pay the lender. And then we had to pay cash for keys to get the tenant out of the property so we can sell the real estate. Right. We did the cash for keys. So, right. We've done 3 advances already on this one estate. Nobody put a penny in their pocket. It was all for estate purposes. But the attorney knows we got it done.
And rather than struggle for not getting filed or not getting the cash for keys or not being current on the mortgage, all those problems go away with the advance process. And I think the other thing is, again, I get attorneys who poo-poo advances because it's expensive money. And meanwhile, how do they stop foreclosure? Sometimes they have to file an ex parte motion to try to stop foreclosure. And then they have to race around to get a loan, which is going to be expensive to stop foreclosure. And all that takes time, effort, energy, and is billed to the estate, whereas an estate advance can oftentimes just solve the problem and make it go away, whether it be pay off the mortgage or pay the arrears in the next 2 or 3 months' payment. So it's a very powerful tool. So you've been around quite a while, and I suspect at this stage of your career, all your business or most of it is just referral from people who've done business with you before, or how else do you generate business besides that?
We do a lot of direct advertising, and so we get probably most, over 50% of our business that way. But I do, fortunately, get referrals from, brokers like you, attorneys out there that I've networked with and have dealt with for many, many years. And, even when things might be slow, the next day an attorney will call or 2 of them will call and they need money, or an existing client will call back and, they need money to keep themselves going.
And I think I had worked with another company before I met you, and I bumped into you and liked you and gave you a chance. And what I found was you move right away. You either say, no, we can't do it, and here's why. As a realtor, that was a great education, or you would do it. And literally the hang-up was never you. It was always the customer signing the paperwork. And I think that's another area that we as realtors should be bringing your service to our attorneys, which is we're used to going to customers' houses and getting them to sign papers or notarize documents. We do that as a normal course of business all the time. Attorneys, they don't want to be salespeople. They don't really want to be in that piece of the business most commonly. And so we can be kind of the oil between the gears to make those things happen. And I found with Paul, that was where we fit real well, was me kind of hustling the paperwork in and out with the customer and getting something done that the customer might have dragged out for weeks, but we were able to get it done right away.
Exactly. And one of the things I should say is, for the real estate agents and brokers listening, I have had a license in the past. I let it go a long time ago, but I was an REO manager when I first got into real estate in the 80s, when things were hairy. I worked for the FDIC and asset liquidation, so I have a lot of experience on the real estate side, and that's my strength. I know this probably better than any competitor out there.
Well, if you know my podcast at all, I say all the time that when we work with attorneys, we have to be mindful that they're a little different, and they work on attorney time versus realtor time. Realtor time, you call an agent, and they're going to call you back when they're off to the next phone call. They're going to call you back, within minutes, maybe worst case an hour. Maybe you get a text, hey, can I call you back? But it happens pretty quick, and those of us in real estate are used to that kind of pace. And my experience with attorneys is, you can call an attorney on a Wednesday, and they'll call you the following Tuesday and say, hey, Bill, I'm returning your phone call. And they say it nonchalant, like, yeah, I'm returning your call. And I'm thinking, what the hell did I call him about? Like, that was almost a week ago. I can't remember why I talked to the guy.
So true.
But to them, that's just normal. Like, well, I got back to you in less than a week. Isn't that sufficient? I was at court, hearings all week long. I had depositions. And as a real estate agent, you kind of go, what? So Paul works on realtor time with attorneys who work on attorney time. So some of these companies were built by attorneys, or the owner is an attorney, but Paul is really one of us when it comes to getting things done. I know that when I've done deals with them, they follow up. And the other thing is that they do offer a referral program, and some people, I've taken advantage of it sometimes I don't. I feel like it's nice to be acknowledged. And so I've had cases with Paul where my client went back to him a second or third time, and I got a check in the mail because I had bought the case and they associated me, and I really appreciate the service that they've done. But he's really like a real estate agent doing this, as opposed to an internet company. Some of the advanced companies are more like Zillow or Redfin. They don't want to talk to people. Paul is, I think, one of us. Is that a fair assessment, Paul?
Absolutely. I'm a real estate investor. I have a self-directed IRA that's been in real estate for 15 years. So yeah, I'm one of the group. I'm one of you guys.
You really are. He really is. It's funny. And you can just always see the difference. And look, I mean, on the negative, that means he's not an attorney. Maybe he doesn't have the depth of legal knowledge. Maybe he can't help with some of the cutting edge pieces, but he's got a long Rolodex of attorney friends. So it's not that he can't get the answer, but his pace, it's like you're doing with a real estate agent or a mortgage officer. It's not like you're doing with an attorney, which I think is very, very refreshing. So you say you work with a lot of real estate agents. What do you see as a common thread of those that work with you regularly, which means they're doing business? What's the common thread that makes them better than the ones that are not as successful?
I think that the fact that they're trying to solve the problem of the administrator or the heirs. It's easy to take a listing and a nice, clean property and put it up for sale. But most probate properties, as you're well aware, have not been maintained well, because typically the owner is an elderly person that may not have had money. So you usually have a lot of work, and it's not going to be top of the market. And additionally, you have typically an heir or two living in the property, and we have to babysit their exit from the property. Sometimes you have delinquent mortgages, so we have to babysit and deal with the mortgage company so they don't foreclose and take the property away before you can get it sold. So there's numerous issues that the probate specialists like you and others that I deal with can handle versus a typical agent I have a niece who's an agent. I love her to pieces, but I'm trying to educate her in this. You know, she can handle a house that's nice and pretty, and you just put the sign in the front yard. But dealing with all these other intricacies that we have to deal with daily, it takes time to learn.
You know, I have a joke. I would say that most realtors complain about all the things they have to do other than the fancy open house, right? They'll complain about termites, rodents, raccoons. I've had
Awesome.
hoarding, possums. I've had cases where we found guns. I've had cases where we found guns that were serial numbers shaved off, meaning illegal guns. I've had cases where we have drugs. I've had cases where we had drug dealer living in the house. I've had a motorcycle that was in the house that you couldn't get outside the doorway because it was inside a garage that had a limited doorway width. Or no, it wasn't a motorcycle, it was some sort of piece of equipment. And as a probate real estate agent, I brag about those things, like how you get 1 point per problem. And I had, one time an 11-pointer. I got a probate advance. It was a hoarding. We had tenants to kick out, drug dealers there. I had an 11-point listing was my record on property in Carson. Probate realtors brag about it. Normal realtors complain about it. I think that's the difference. That I talk to somebody like you, and you're bragging about how tough your deals are. You're one of us. When people complain about it, gee, your business is too tough. There's too many problems. Well, we get paid to solve problems.
Bill, I've done 2 probate short sales.
Now that is
2.
not for the meek of heart. If you're a short sale and it's a probate, and at some point people understand that what that means is not just as a short sale, but somebody has to get paid in the estate, or there has to be a benefit to the estate. So it can't just be you getting paid. It has to be somehow there's another party. Oftentimes sellers don't get any money at all. In a short sale of probate, normally you got to negotiate at least $10,000 for the judge to go along with, I would think.
Yeah, see, I like to brag about those things. They're fun.
They are fun. I think that's what makes the business different. In the moment, it's hard and aggravating. You find out a new problem. Like I said, the case I had one where they had a bunch of guns, and then the guy called me up and said, "Okay, we found 4 of the guns had serial numbers filed off, and we don't want to touch them, and so we're just going to leave them here, and you need to handle that." And at the moment, I'm in the middle of doing something else. Oh, I have to deal with this. Call the sheriff. And the process is you just call the police or sheriff, and they're glad to come pick them up for you for free. And even if they're loaded or not loaded, they'll pick up in whatever condition, just for those who don't know that. And so I've known that. But afterwards, I could brag about it because most people don't know what to do. Another one's cars. How do you get cars? It's one thing when the estate has a nice, vintage Mercedes coupe from the 60s, and it's got a nice paint job. Those are fun. But what about when the guy has like 5 cars, and there's only, let's say 5 cars with like maybe a total of 15 wheels on the 5 cars, and 3 engines. Like, what do you do? Who deals with that? Well, there's people who deal with that. And again, knowing that, that's people who are in the business. And how do you get rid of that? Sometimes you have to pay people. Sometimes you can get it done for free. When you have to pay people something, and there's no money in the estate, that's when you call Paul and you say, "Hey, Paul, we need $5,000 or $10,000 in this case, and here's the situation." And you tell him the story, and then he'll tell you his story, and you're on the phone for about half an hour, but it's a lot of fun. One of the things that I also admire about you is your great reputation amongst the attorneys you work with in Los Angeles. Now, I know part of that, full disclosure, is that you've been in the business quite a while. Part of it is you used to be able to go to court, meet with them in person, which was a big advantage that newer people getting this business don't have. But what would you say would be 1 or 2 things that you would advise somebody, like maybe was it your daughter or your niece that is a realtor? What are 1 or 2 things you advise them to do to help them build relationships where they can't go to court necessarily and meet them all the time? What would you recommend for them to do?
Just be sincere and helpful. Like I was talking to her the other day, I saw a case in her, close to where she lives. And I say, I would call this attorney and tell them that you'd like to help him, not just take the listing, but you want to help him because you're painting the picture that you're going to be there not only for this particular case, but for others.
Right.
And just offer your services. And I do that to people. You know, they'll say, oh, that's expensive. My comeback to them is, well, do you have a credit card and can you take a cash advance? And of course, 99% of them don't.
Hmm.
So see, but I'm helping them. I'm trying to say, do you have a family member you can borrow the money from?
Right.
If you can, you know, maybe I lose one deal a month, but you know what? I get 9 out of 10 that I talk to because I'm being sincere and I'm helping them solve the problem. I think that's the key. Just being sincere and being client focused.
You know, I got a phone call last night from an attorney who was referred by another attorney. He said, I have a court sale going on. Turns out it's tomorrow, Thursday. And he had some questions. And, you know, he started talking about it in generic. And I know sometimes people are scared to share with you the actual case. But in his case, because he gave me the date of the sale, I said, well, look, your property is one of these three, because I have the list of all the sales coming up. And he goes, wow, you really know this stuff. I said, yeah, but I spent about half hour with him. This is an attorney who probably would have charged his customer a full hour's hourly rate, and I'm helping him for free. But here's the thing I know is the next time he has a probate, he's going to call me. And I think that's the same attitude that you've given to me that I learned from, which was I saw you in court. You didn't charge me an hourly rate. You didn't make me promise to give you a deal. In fact, you gave me a book on top of when I met you in person, which was helpful. It overviewed the probate process. But because you educated me, then the next time I had a problem, you're one of the people I would call and say, hey, I have this problem. How do I solve it? And most of the time, it does not require a probate advance. Sometimes it does. And if I'm on the phone with you, bingo, that's your business, right? That's kind of your whole approach to your business, it seems like.
Yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been doing this almost 30 years now, and I've kept fed and paid my mortgage and everything else over the last 30 years. So there's something.
Well, I've managed to keep fit. I'm not a really a good advertiser for my business, but somehow I've been more than fed based on results. You know, and I think, Paul, one of the negatives of the COVID, you know, for me, it was great in that it kind of made it much harder for competition to come in and replace my business. There was people who have been doing probate. I learned in court every day, and now they have a hard time to learn what I was able to learn when I was there. And so it really was a big advantage for me personally. The negative is I used to go and see people like you regularly. And, you know, I in addition to missing the companionship and the camaraderie of talking about the deals, truth is, you know, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, I don't see you as much. Therefore, when I have a problem that comes up in this field, I don't think of you as often. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, but let's be honest, part of marketing sometimes is being in front of people. And so I really appreciate you being on this call today to share with everybody on the platform. I would urge everybody in this call to reach out to Paul with questions about problems with customers who need money in advance. And I want to say personally, I have always enjoyed talking to you. And I have to say, every time I ever called you, you've helped me somehow. Either I learned something, you couldn't help for it, and you gave me the reason why, or you're able to and do a really good job at executing what you guys do.
Thank you for that. And I feel the same way about you. But, you know, if I'm helpful to people like you and others, it's because so many people have helped me.
Right.
I always say I learn something new every day, whether it's, you know, the nuances of some probate code or whatever. I'm constantly dealing with attorneys. I'm constantly dealing with customers, brokers.
Yes.
I'm always learning and I'm always wanting to learn.
Yeah.
And the purpose is to pass that information on, not to retain it up here. I got too much in there already. So I need to diffuse the information.
You and me both. Well, Paul, I appreciate you diffusing today on Probate Weekly and in the past as well, and just as an ongoing resource. Appreciate your time, your support. Look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And just a reminder, Advanced Inheritance Cash is the company. Approved Inheritance Cash. I'm sorry, I say this. Approved. There's a bunch of companies with related names. Approved InheritanceCash.com is the website. Approved Inheritance Cash is the company. Paul Wilkins is the proprietor. And on the website has basic information as well as an apply now online or their phone number. You can call him and set up an appointment. Call today. And look, I call him, he picks up the phone. One of the beauties of doing with him is you call Paul and he answers, and you have your problem solved. So thank you so much for Paul for being on the call today. And then for the rest of you, again, Probate Weekly, I'd love to have you join. We broadcast new episodes every Thursday on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the social media. If you want to get reminders, put your email address in. If you want text reminders, put your text number in. We'd be glad to do that. You don't have to, but love to. And then if you scroll down, we're available in all the audio formats as well as past episodes on YouTube as well. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate, and BillGrossProbate.com is the website. If I can help any way, please reach out. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much, everybody.